Uh, Hello again. Let's try this one more time. Hopefully you can hear us this, although frankly, who wants to look at me in my kitchen? But welcome to Auto Express lunchtime lockdown. Apologies for that, but he's trying challenge. As somebody's just said, having a technical problem is better than a wardrobe malfunction. On trousers, long trousers, I should point out, not just trousers, for well over a month. Sean Carson, Sean. Yep, sorry about the technology. Do let us know if you're experiencing any. That he's driven the car in Namibia. I've driven it in the UK, Sean.
Well, we were on was 3 days. All and along dusty gravel tracks. So everything.
That's pretty impressive. I haven't experienced it off-road, but in my drive I had around the Midlands, around Jaguar Land Rover's HQ in Gaydon, I think it took me about 200 yards to realise the car was going to be quite special and quite different from the Defender. So I really quite surprised how playful the car was. There was a moment where Mike Cross, who's quite a driver himself, who's Jaguar Land Rover's chief test driver, and the engineering team runs those guys. He was taking me around their test track at a 3-figure speed around a bend, physics, which is so I really wasn't expecting. There was no body lean, no squeal of the tires. When I was driving myself, you kind of could lift off a little bit and get the nose tucking in. Not quite like how much fun the car was to drive, which is something you can't really say about Discovery. But in Namibia, Sean.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Steve, about the sense of fun you get from the car. Jaguar Land Rover's big engineering boss, Nick Rogers, joined us out there on the trip, and that was something that he was trying to get across, that they wanted to instill this character that separated the Defender, kind of like you can actually quite nice, and you feel that it's got good agility for an SUV, its size and weight that rides that high from the road. How good it everything is usually about power, 0 to 60 times, but the Defender does something different. All the technology that Land Rover's crammed into the car to make it so capable off-road puts you front and center of the driving experience and direct the car low speeds and have fun to do.
Road settings, but the thing I like is you just put it in one setting. The extremes of Namibia as well.
Yeah, definitely. And for experience guides out with us who were talking us through the tech on food and raise the air. Even those very experienced at this kind of thing admitted that pretty much for most of the time it adjusts all the different parameters, diffs, the ESC, the hill descent. You can get really involved in the experience. Such as clear sight ground view that
I'm going to use a neat I must admit, when I first saw the Defender and that moment where they pull the cover off and you're supposed to, it's fantastic. Thinking, really retro, something a bit. But the thing that they say is, if of course it was some lovely for it, but the interior seats you can have thrown car, in spite of what it looks. Does it? I hope. So the interior of the Defender, you've got 6 seats. You can't have 8 seats, so you can't have the middle seat in the front of the car and the 2 at the back, which I thought was a bit of a shame. But there were plenty of other lovely interior features, aren't there?
Yeah, I think there are lots of utilitarian feel that the old Defender was known for. Sphere that little bit as well, and I think that's a point that this new car really more of that pre.
I would think so for the price. Let's be honest, this isn't the total. It's an expensive car, not the old farmer's friend that it used to be. Prices start for the 110 at 4. Start 90, we can't just yet, is £40,000. So this is an expensive car. The other issue as well is one that Peter on you put a comment. Have Land Rovers, my friends, they are really good point, because run a few Land Rovers, they are, many of them, the best cars in the world, but you always have to say, but they might go wrong. And unfortunately, the power survey has published, you can see the results online now, doesn't do well, does it? But this is built to make a difference.
I hope that it will make a difference. And one thing that I know Land Rover has spent an awful lot of time and is the companies investing in new electronic architecture, and also the testing process to develop that you would hope a Land Rover is going to give you. And one thing that also
I think pretty rubbish, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And you guys out there, you know, I'll read see this as in the current Land Rover models, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, it is improved. Even on the beta version we tested, there were fewer crashes and bugs that we encountered.
Very hard for it. I think the new plant. The question is, you and said, should I buy a new Land Rover Defender fine now?
I guess feedback to Land a while. So I guess the default will not let you down. But what I could say categorically is that it's a car with great thing that Land Rover toes, they overlap that little bit, but the Defender feels decidedly different.
Yeah, I think again, looking out. The 3 litre as well, but it's 79,000. So between 40,000 and 80,000, you can get Defender, every sport, Evoque, gets into there as well.
Velar, another car.
Velar, the Velar, Range Rover, easy one to forget. Does look nice. 7, so seven. The right fingers. So there are a lot of Range Rovers that kind of overlap in a Venn diagram type form, and so let's before we move on to other stuff, Sean. Let's just ask you, which Land Rover product would you have between that 40 and 80? Would you have a Defender?
Do you know what? I think I would have a Defender, and it goes back to that point that it feels different. It's got its own identity, and I quite like that in a car. I think that one, the styling is good. I quite like the look of the car. I didn't necessarily. I almost didn't know quite how I felt about it when I first saw it on the motor show stand, but I've certainly warmed to the way it looks. And I think when I saw it out in Namibia, in the location where it's been designed and engineered to perform, it definitely looked the part.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I must admit, I've kind of fallen in love with the car, the way it drives. I guess the problem for me is I just love the Range Rover so much, and in fact, we've got to wait 12 to fix any bugs. I think you'll struggle to get one of the early cars, which might not be a bad thing, because there'll be a waiting list. But yeah, I think I'd be sorely tempted by a Defender, and just hope that these reliability things, and we know that they've changed the whole engineering, the way the engineering is done, and the way the teams work together to try and make sure that this is a Land Rover that will last. And I guess it has to, doesn't it, really?
Definitely, Steve. And I think to help answer Tyrone's question, one thing that Land Rover is rolling out with the new Defender is over-the-air software updates for the car, which will come online at some point in the future. So while, yes, maybe later cars will have a few fixes for bugs that might have been fed back or picked up, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that early cars won't be able to be updated remotely to sort of smooth out that that ownership kind of prospect. So I think that we hope, because there's lots of things good with the car, there's lots right with the car, but we hope that the reliability and the customer experience lives up to everything else that the car offers.
Yeah, in fact, somebody's just said, is it just me finding the clothes being hung behind Steve odd, calm and fascinating? Well, that's my wife wearing a very embarrassing Tottenham Hotspur top, putting the washing out because I think she thought we'd be finished by now, but there we go. So apologies if you are finding my wife's washing rather, that sounds awful, doesn't it? My wife hanging her washing oddly calming. But I'm more embarrassed by the Tottenham Hotspur top. Talking about Tottenham Hotspur, as a Tottenham Hotspur fan, Phil Mullins, who was on Twitter earlier, we were going to talk about lockdown hair. He's got awesome lockdown hair. It's just had the whole thing shaved off anyway. So Alex is asking, is there any point in the Discovery anymore if the Defender is so good? I think they've got different places, haven't they, Sean?
Yeah, I think they have. I think when Land Rover launched the Discovery 5 a few years ago, they definitely pushed it up market and it was more premium, and the price rose because of that as well. It was basically, it felt like a 7-seat Range Rover, and now Defender's arrived. That kind of makes sense. We know that they've spread the two cars apart. So I think there is still a point in the Discovery if the Defender exists, because the Discovery is definitely a little bit more upmarket, more luxurious, slightly different image, because the styling is divisive on that. There's no two ways about it, but it does offer you something different. If you want to spend your 55, 60, 65,000 pounds on a big SUV with lots of seats, there are two ways to go about it now.
Okay, let's take the final couple of questions on the Discovery before we move on to something else briefly. Tyrone's asking, will there be cylinder diesel? And on Twitter earlier, Will was asking, why haven't they just done an all-electric one? Where's the all-electric story for Defender?
Well, there will be in fact, there already is an electrified Defender on sale. The P400 is a mild hybrid, but there will be a plug-in hybrid that will join the range later on. So there is going to be some electrification. As for a full-on EV, not so sure about that just yet. We can but hope. As for a six-cylinder Defender, we already know that Land Rover has a lot in the pipeline for this body style, for this model. There'll be.
Go on. What is it? Go on. Tell us. What is it?
Well, there's nothing confirmed. But if you look what Land Rover has done with its other nameplates, with Discovery, it's got a family of cars with Range Rover Sport, Discovery Sport, and we know that the previous Defender obviously had commercial applications available. So we know Land Rover are looking at different options, and potentially, there might be an SVO inspired or breathed on version in the future. So watch this space, I think, is the answer to that one.
Now you're talking. Now, I was lucky enough to run a G63 for a while, G-Class, and with a burbling V8 that made a hell of a noise. That was just a spectacular car, and I think a V8 version, an SVO version of the new Defender would be absolutely fantastic. I can't wait for that. But you're right, there is the mild hybrid system in the P400, which actually worked pretty well, I thought, although you can't run electrification. I'm told that plug-in hybrids are coming in. On the subject of plug-in hybrids, tomorrow in tomorrow's Auto Express, you can see first news of another couple of Land Rover plug-in hybrid models, the Discovery Sport and the Range Rover Evoque. Can't say anything more because it's on embargo until tomorrow. Probably broken the embargo by even mentioning it, but look in Auto Express tomorrow. So some news that has come out today. Let's move away from the lovely Land Rover Defender and talk about the new Audi A3 Saloon, which has been unveiled today. And I guess I'm going to be blunt. What's the point?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Certainly over here in the UK, we're big fans of hatchbacks. So the A3 Sportback's going to make up the majority of sales. But I quite like the fact that Audi have persevered with the saloon body style, because it just offers something that little bit different. I quite like the look of the car. I think, you go back and look through the back catalogue of A3s, and they're always quite reserved products. But I think the Saloon is a well-proportioned vehicle. And I think there's one more point to make on that as well, that if you look at the previous gen A3 Cabriolet, that car was actually based on the Saloon. So to have a more elegant A3 Cabriolet of this new generation of A3, I think that the Saloon exists or Saloon will exist is definitely a good thing.
Well, for sure it's going to have a fantastic interior. It's going to have the MMI system. It's going to have a digital dash. I think matrix headlights will be available. Engine-wise, I understand 2 1.5 TFSI units and 1 2-litre TDI. Who knows which is which, because they've all got that weird nomenclature now. So a 35 TFSI is a 1.5-litre engine. I'm sure there's a way of working it out. But the thing that gets me about this car, it's, as I understand, it's about 4.5 metres long. The Audi A4 is 4.7 metres long. Now, that's what I guess that it's a ruler. I remember my ruler at school was a foot long, 30 centimetres. So we're talking about Defender overlapping with other models in the Land Rover range. Do we really need a 4-door Audi A3? Do we need And I know there is a Mercedes A-Class Saloon as well as the Mercedes LA, which is a saloon. There's the big. Do we need so many different versions of all these cars?
I guess that from your vehicle. If Audi and there's a business case for them, then, and they must do because they're on sale, then I think consumers having a wide range of choice is actually a good thing. You know, if you want your hatchback, if you want your A3 in hatchback form, then you buy the hatchback. If you want it as a saloon, you buy the saloon. I think if you look at other niches, we've got Q3 and Q3 Sportback and kind of coupe forms of SUV body styles. So I think it's just a good thing that the choice is there, available. In some cases you pay a premium for it, but it makes the road an interesting place to car spot.
Yeah, Felipe has said on YouTube, I don't understand this compact sedan format. It reminds me of the 80s Corsa sedan. I don't understand it either. I'm not a massive sedan saloon fan, if I'm perfectly honest. And that is so clever. The technology should make money on. But yeah, I guess personally I don't understand it. Pete Baden has said, I love the look of the new A3's interior. How do you think it compares to the A-Class and 1 Series? Now, A-Class, oh, what an interior.
Yeah, the A-Class's cabin is really nice. And I think the fact that came out a few, and next to the new 1 Series that was only released last year, that shows that Mercedes really got it right. The quality materials, there's nothing wrong with the 1 Series cabin. In fact, the infotainment works brilliantly and ergonomically it's quite good, but it just lacks a little bit of sparkle compared to the Mercedes for me.
Yeah, I think Audi's cabins are renowned for being beautifully built, but I just think you're right. There's a bit of sparkle to the Mercedes cabin. That said, and we'll move on to the next subject. Now we're going to talk about PHEVs. I recently, before lockdown, had a Mercedes A-Class A250, which is the plug-in. Was fantastic. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the car rattled. It's an A-Class now. It's got quality. You get in now. The chances are that somebody comes up and says, "I've got a like mother." You don't. Poor Mercedes needs to address.
That's interesting. I was in a CLA 35 not long before, an AMG version, not long before lockdown, and I thought that the quality in that was quite good. And given the fact that one was on 19-inch wheels because it had the premium plus pack, so adaptive dampers as well, but quality was quite good. So I don't know whether it was just a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, we were also running. Let's talk about plug-in hybrids now, which is, as I said, there's news about plug-in hybrids in Auto Express out tomorrow on Wednesday. And it seems that no car is launched without a plug-in hybrid system. I wouldn't be surprised to see the A3 eventually with an e-tron plug-in hybrid system as well. But plug-in hybrids, some people have said they're an ideal stepping stone towards full electric. Other people have said it's the worst of both worlds, being the fact that you're going to have to lug around some batteries when they're dead, and you've got an inefficient petrol engine doing the same. Pulling those batteries around, it just doesn't make sense. But what's your view on plug-in hybrids, Sean?
Well, I think it's a kind of horses for courses debate, really, because it all comes down to how you use your car. So, for example, if your commute is, maybe 20 miles or so, or your round trip is only 25, 30 miles a day, the school run to the supermarket or the gym, I think that a plug-in hybrid could be a very good option for you. What we can't stress enough at Auto Express is that if you do have a plug-in hybrid, you must charge it religiously at night to maximize the efficiency potential. Otherwise, like you say, Steve, you're driving around the car with an electric motor and a big battery pack with a 1.4 petrol engine, let's say, carrying all that dead weight, and it's not contributing anything. The other thing about plug-in hybrids is if you're going to need that kind of long distance touring or cruising ability, then they're really good, because obviously, when you deplete the battery, your petrol or diesel engine kicks in, and you don't have to worry about, range anxiety is not a problem for you. So it depends how you look at them, how you view the debate, whether you think a plug-in hybrid is a good idea or not.
I think we're seeing a lot better in terms of range for plug-in hybrids. The Mercedes A250e that I had, I think the range is around 45 miles, the claimed range. And you know what? I was driving it around. I had to force it to for the internal combustion engine to kick in. Otherwise, I'd just been driving around, including a stint on the motorway, on fully electric power. It's a really nice experience, obviously, driving fully electric. But I genuinely managed to get over 40 miles of range out of the car, which I think is pretty good these days. Certainly better than the first experience. And let's be honest, as you were saying, for most people, most of the time, 20 miles or around 20 miles, it's all they do a day. So as long as they plug in, and the clue is in the name, as you quite rightly said, it's a plug-in hybrid. You've got to plug in. There are tax benefits, of course, to plug-in hybrids with the low CO2 outputs, particularly if they do a greater range. The MPG claims of 200 miles per gallon plus. Again, if you're plugging in all the time, that is actually achievable. The clue is in the name. Now, I know a lot of people have bought the UK's best-selling plug-in hybrid, I think, is the Mitsubishi Outlander. And a lot of people bought those. It's one of the first on the market. Again, if you plug it in, super efficient. A lot of people bought it for the tax incentives, never plugged them in. And the companies that bought the cars as company cars have found they've had huge fuel bills for people driving a car with an inefficient petrol engine going lots of miles, lugging a load of batteries around. So you've got to use these cars properly. Difficult thing to police if you're looking at the taxation issue. But in my view, they are a good stepping stone towards electrification, which is where we're all going to end up, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And on your point, Steve, about the improving range of this sort of new crop of plug-in hybrids we're seeing coming through, that's reflected in the government's taxation of these cars. So if you look at the company car tax bandings now, that cars with zero emission capability, they're banded on how far they can travel on electric power alone. So the government's cottoning on to this fact as well. I think one thing about plugging them in is it can be, I wouldn't say it can be a chore, because it's so simple, when you get home to just, if you've got a home wall box, to just plug it in and schedule your charging if it's got that capability. But if you equate that to a running cost advantage, if you work out just how cheap it is to run that car on electricity for those 20 or 30 miles, and then do that over 12 months, you'll find out that it has the potential to slash your outgoings well massive amount.
And we just find that we will let them
Exactly.
The other thing that's worth mentioning as well, I think it's mainstream plug-in technology. It's coming to BMW's Ford as well, with a plug-in hybrid version of the new Cougar. It's coming to so many cars.
It is, and I think
excuse me.
The point about the stepping stone to full electrification is a good one, because I've got friends and family who've sampled plug-in hybrid cars, and once they've tried that powertrain and experienced that hit of electrified torque that kind of smoothly and serenely propels you up the road, they're more interested to see what a full electric car might be like, and the benefits that it'll bring, again, for running costs, but for refinement and for performance. Because if you look at a Kia e-Niro, for example, 201 horsepower, but it's got super high torque. So actually, away from the lights, it's as quick as a small hot hatchback like the Ford Fiesta ST. So you've got performance there as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Kia e-Niro. The thing I love about that car from an electric point of view is its real world range. Kia claim around 250 miles. It will do 250 miles. I did a journey with my family of five, some of whom have been wandering around behind and are still wandering around behind, even though we're broadcasting. I'll take it up with them later. Family of five to my parents, 75 miles there, 75 miles back, full charge to start with. I got home, I had 111 miles of range still left. That was on a motorway where these cars are supposed to be their least efficient. But yeah, I'm really impressive. I think if I was to name one brand that's really surprised me, it's probably leading in terms of electric technology, Tesla aside, I think I would say Kia or Hyundai as a group are probably leading that.
I think they probably are. You're right. With cars like the Kia e-Niro and the new Soul EV, that's a very good car. And there's a model year 20 Kona electric just come out. But I think we're going to see some competition for the likes of Kia and Hyundai from Volkswagen, the Volkswagen Group, once Volkswagen's family of ID cars are out there on sale.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be impressive products, and as long as they can get their control electronics for the battery right and the thermal management, because this is where where it really, the range really lies in the nitty gritty of the engineering details. And let's face it, if you're buying an electric car or a plug-in car, you want maximum electric range you can. So I think Volkswagen will do pretty well with their ID family of cars. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe I think electric cars is probably a whole new Auto Express lunchtime live in the future, and maybe one that we can do again when the technology gets right. But for now, I think, Sean, we should probably wrap up today's broadcast. I apologise again, ladies and gentlemen, that we've had some technical issues. May still be having some sound issues. This is something we will get ironed out. The next one will be even better. So thank you very much for bearing with us. Of course, we want to hear what you've got to say about this. Email us at our email address that's in the magazine on the website. Tweet us or make comments. Just get in touch with us. We've also got the Auto Express podcast, which is out on Wednesday morning, as is the magazine. In the meantime, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Sean. It's been very good of you to join me today.
Thanks very much, Steve. Thanks very much, everyone out there watching, and thanks for bearing with us.
And hopefully we'll see you again very soon for another Auto Express Lunchtime Live. But for now, I'm going to go and have my lunch. Good to see you, and thanks a lot. Bye.